Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. It's that time of year again, folks. It has been at least 10 minutes since I made the last one. It's time for another top 5 new San Martins video. 5 mini reviews of their 5 newest releases, perfectly timed to coincide perfectly with the AliExpress 11/11 sale, the best time of year to buy for the best prices. Now, the sale hasn't quite started yet. It starts on the 11th, oddly enough, but Ali allows you to add items to your cart to lock in the sale prices and then come back and check out when the sale begins. You saw the pop-up? This video is sponsored by the San Martin official store on AliExpress. I'll leave links to all 5 watches in the order that I show them in the description of the video, and of course all 5 of those links will be to the official store because why would you buy from anywhere else? And there's one watch on the list today, a brand new model that's causing a bit of a stir on YouTube, people claiming it's San Martin's best model ever. I feel I'm in a reasonable position to make that call. So let's start at number 1 with that particular watch, the SN0144 Janjan. Now, San Martin has taken the rather unusual step of releasing this one in 3 different sizes at the same time. 36mm, 39mm and 42mm, all at the same price, that being just over $300 US during the sale. They sent me the Blue Dial 39, but everything that you see and everything that I say applies equally to the orange and the red in both the other sizes. Apart from the dimensions. The dimensions on this one are oddly enough 39mm in diameter, only 10.2mm thick. They have really utilised the inherent slimness of the Miyota movement. 46 lug to lug, 20mm between the lugs. It tapers all the way down to 16 at the clasp, this one, which is really nice. The weight sized for my 7-inch wrist is 130 grams. Crystal is of course sapphire, but they've used flat sapphire to keep the height down. Water resistance is 100 meters, perfectly fine for this style of watch, and the movement, as alluded to, is a 4Hz Miyota 9015. Now, before we hit the macro lens, let's have a look at the dimensions of the other sizes. Note that the 42 has a 49.5 lug to lug and 21mm lug width. The 36 has a 43.5mm lug to lug, but 19mm lug width. So they're gonna wear proportionately, but you're gonna have to deal with those slightly awkward lug widths if you want to change from the supplied bracelet. Now, the dial here is a bit of a standout. It's an enamel dial inspired by ancient Chinese porcelain. The effect is really subtle, but it's actually very nice, perhaps because it's really subtle. The applied indices and handset look very familiar, but that's no bad thing as they are well proportioned and legible. San Martin seem insistent though on using that super long counterbalance to the second hand. I'm not a massive fan, to be honest, but it now seems to have become something of a trademark. Talking of which, I'm delighted to see a custom case back on this one as well. Too often I complain about their sterile case backs. All 4 of the other watches on the list today feature a sterile case back. This one doesn't once again, but says made by San Martin on it, which is rather nice. This is a Chinese brand. It's great to see them once again embracing and proudly displaying a little bit of their culture in this particular model. The finish of both the case and the bracelet is exceptional. You know, it really isn't an exaggeration to start making big claims about this watch being finished as well as anything under $1,000 because those claims are pretty accurate. All the brushing is super fine. There's some lovely high polished chamfers, including on the underside of the case for comfort. And I haven't seen this bracelet before from San Martin. It's very Grand Seiko-esque with brushed upper and side surfaces, but 4 high polish angled chamfers on each of the links. I also haven't seen this clasp from them before either. It's not their standard clasp. It has a central ridge to match the bracelet, and it has a Rolex glide lock style adjustment mechanism rather than the ratcheting deployant. The San Martin hexagon is also etched in rather than applied. On wrist, this one reminds me a lot of the Tudor Black Bay 58 case that they also use for the Ranger. It has almost the same top-down profile, but the San Martin is even slimmer. So then, is it San Martin's best watch ever? Well, it's not far off. However, you can kind of take your pick from anything that you personally like the look of, from about $200 up to about $350 these days. They're all pretty fantastic. If you are keen on this particular model, make sure you're okay with the multifaceted bracelet links and make sure you're okay with the size if you do opt for the 36 or the 42. My only real complaint is they could have done with adding a chamfer to the bottom edge of the bracelet on this one, but for $300 it's outstanding, which frankly is what we've come to expect from this brand after 5 years now in business. Alright, well, how on earth do you follow that? Well, what about with what is quite possibly the best watch you can buy for $200? A bright purple SN0129. Having said that, you don't have to choose purple if you don't want to. They have released a series of no less than 7 of these, all featuring a new type of texture dial. They're all the same size, they're all the same price, all just under $200 during the current sale. This is also a 39mm watch, but because it uses a Seiko NH and dome glass, it's a little bit thicker, coming in at 13.2. Lug to lug on these is 46.5, and it's a standard 20mm lug width, again tapering down to 16mm at the clasp. As sized for me, this one is a little bit heavier, coming in at 142 grams, 100 meters of water resistance, double dome sapphire, and a Seiko NH35 round out the specs. Now, because we are floating around the 200 rather than the 300, the case back is sterile and the logo on the dial is printed rather than applied. Also, the date wheel is at 3 instead of 6 and it's white instead of being colour matched, but the dial looks really good. It's a really nice shade of purple, it's very deep, it's very rich. It looks to me though that they have either moulded or even printed that texture and then put a clear piece of kind of perspex type material on top, because those indices and all printing is done on a flat surface rather than the actual texture dial surface. Hands and indices, all nicely manufactured though, no rough edges, no dust, no dirt. Case finish again is just exceptional. They really do make the Japanese brands look a bit stupid for this money. The bracelet has brushed upper surfaces, but a high polish chamfer on its edge, matching the high polish chamfer on the edge of the case. And it seems like the new glide lock style clasp is a bit of a thing because it also features on the SN129 as well. But it definitely wears heavier and chunkier because of the thicker movement and ultimately the thicker case. Perhaps they'll do this model in a range of sizes at some point in the future. The 42 though would be getting up there in terms of size and weight, might end up being a little bit too top heavy if they do so. My complaints about this one, if you're forcing me to, well, the Seiko movement is nothing we haven't seen a million times before, and there's a lot going on with this one. The colours are all in your face and there are high polished surfaces everywhere. So it's definitely not a shy and retiring watch. But I say it every time I make a San Martin video. Don't just take my word for it. You need to experience just how good these watches are for yourself. You need to experience them in hand. They will reframe your expectations of what you can get for your dollar. And it's hard to go back to Orients, to Seikos, frankly, even to Tissot's and to Hamilton's after you've handled one of these. Alright, at number 3 on today's list, it's essentially a four-handed version of number 2, so we're not going to be here for long. This is also an SN0129, but it comes with a GMT movement and a number of different mineral dial options, including the red agate that you see before you. There is a premium for the movement and the dial. These are going to sting you about 70 US more than the last watch. Plenty of options though, including lapis lazuli, aventurine, marble, red agate and jade, all offering very different colours and very different looks therefore. Dimensions are the same as its three-handed brethren, but with an extra 0.3 of a mil of thickness because of the fourth hand, and an extra few grams because of the slightly thicker case back. It's the same dual layer dial according to my macro lens anyway, but for your extra dollars this time, you also get an applied logo. Plus you get a reprofiled bezel with paint-filled GMT markings, which keeps the dial relatively uncluttered. The bracelet on this one is an old school 3-link oyster style, and the clasp is the old school San Martin clasp with the embedded hexagon logo and the ratcheting centimeter of adjustment across 5 positions. On wrist it's nice and comfortable, but I will say that it's getting on the thick side for a 39, coming in as it does at 13.5mm. And on this red agate dial, the red GMT hand does rather blend in. Perhaps they could have specified a different colour for this particular mineral. So there you go, you can have your SN129 in two different ways depending on your movement preference and depending on your budget. At number 4 is the first of two divers on today's list, and it's a brand new original design. They call this one the SN142, and it also features a number of new design elements that I haven't seen from the brand elsewhere. For example, this single link bracelet is very unusual, very 1970s. It looks like it perhaps should belong on an LED watch rather than a diver, and this is the first San Martin that I can remember reviewing with a 4 o'clock crown and a 4 o'clock porthole date complication. They do two different versions of this one, both the same price. There's the orange and black one, that was the one I was sent, plus there's a monochrome version, both coming in at just over $210 during the current sale. They claim this one at 39.5, and indeed it is across the case, but it's 40 across the bezel. That's what it looks like, so that's what I'm going to call it as. Thickness is 13.3, lug to lug is 48.3. Lug width is 20, again tapering down to 18. Weight as sized is 152 grams. Water resistance, as you'd expect, goes up to 200 meters. It's single dome sapphire, and the movement is an Epson YN55. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with that one, but if you're not, it's the same movement that one finds in the back of an Orient Komatsu. So it's almost indistinguishable in practice from a Seiko NH, perhaps just a little bit noisier both on wrist when the rotor's winding and when you manually wind it. The watch features a 120 click unidirectional dive time bezel with a brushed ceramic insert. Case finish, typically nice, but it does have the sterile case back, coin edge bezel, high polished chamfers running from lug tip to lug tip, and look at the lugs. They're long, but they both curve down and they curve in. They've really tried their best to integrate the case and the bracelet today and give the whole watch that kind of retro futuristic feel. The bracelet itself, very, very comfortable, probably the most comfortable of all the watches on the list today, and we're back with the traditional clasp in inverted commas with double pushers and the inlaid hexagon logo once more. On wrist, this one wears quite big thanks to those long lugs. The mid-link is articulated, but it still extends the effective lug to lug by a few mil either side. Super comfortable bracelet though, as noted, and you'll have no problems getting a good fit because the links themselves are relatively compact. It is a slightly odd fish though, isn't it? I like the circular indices, but maybe those circles could have been a little bit bigger. And the 4 o'clock date looks a bit awkward because of the colour mismatch on this orange version anyway, and because it does sit slightly inboard of the rest of the circular indices. Look, I can't criticise San Martin for having a crack though. It's always nice to see them come out with new designs rather than copycats lookalikes. I guess within those new designs there are some hits and some misses. This one probably falls somewhere in between. And finally at number 5, it's like seeing an old friend again after a couple of months. It's an SN0116. I'm on record as saying that this base watch is their best watch, and despite the new 144's exquisite finishing, there's still a lot to be said for one of these if you like that skin diver look. Earlier on this year I did one of these mini reviews on a Fotinad 4-hander, that's the watch on my wrist today, but today we instead get to look at a 3-handed version, also with Fotina. And oddly enough, it's pretty much the same, but with one hand missing and with the switch to an aluminium bezel insert for period correctness. These are very well priced in either green like I have, or there's a black version as well. They also have a vintage style leather strap option if you don't fancy the bracelet and want to save yourself about $26. So around $225 on the bracelet, just over $200 if you opt for the leather instead. 39.5mm in diameter, 12.3mm thick with a lug to lug of 46, 20 between the lugs. Once again, there's a taper down to 16. As size for me, this one weighs in at 128 grams, water resistance is 200 meters, crystal is box dome sapphire, and it's our old friend the Seiko NH35 running the show. There's a lovely skin diver profile on this one, and the bezel and crystal both perfectly match the style of the watch as does the Beads of Rice bracelet. There are now just so many of these 116s, either three-handers, four-handers. There are bright and colourful versions, there are monochromatic versions, there are versions like this with forced patina. Have a good look. You're bound to find one you like the look of. Go for the one that you like the look of the most. When it first came out, I felt it was their standout model, but over the last 18 months now, I think the rest of the range has really caught up, both with the 129 and the new 144. Those watches really give the 116 a proper run for its money. If I'm going to moan, well, I still think the counterbalance on the second hand is a bit too big. The distressed look is also very much a question of individual taste, and the clasp is perhaps just a little bit too large for the watch and a little bit too contemporary for the watch. And this particular watch, this Actual Example, had some sharp edges on the underside of the case that just simply aren't on my four-hander. Perhaps they forgot to take the edges of this one off at the factory because there's definitely an inconsistency there, and I mentioned that to my contact at San Martin because it's so out of character for their stuff. So there you have it, yet another 5 new or newish San Martins. The 144, absolutely gorgeous, but if that doesn't grab you, don't worry, because the 129 and 116 are both equally gorgeous. The 144 maybe didn't quite resonate with me personally. I think there's the beginnings of a good original design in there, but maybe it needs a version 2 before it really comes into its own. They're all stunning value though, and like I said, if you haven't bought one, find the one you like. It doesn't have to be any of these. There are no shortage of San Martin models for you to choose from. Get one during a sale and see what the hype is all about. I promise you it'll end up being a bit of a before and after point in your affordable watch collecting journey. Well done for making it all the way to the back end of the video. If none of these quite hit the spot, why not check out another couple of top 5s? Like I said, you are not short of options with San Martin. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you again in the next one.